Welcome to the Sports Idol Podcast. It's Rivalry Week, and we are excited. Hope you are too. We're going to get into all 9 contenders that are left for a college football playoff spot. We're going to go through the 8 games there that include those 9 teams, from clean old-fashioned hate to the game. Georgia Tech, for those of you that don't know. And the Bulldogs are going to go in as a 24-point favorite. That's right, a 24-point favorite. And so we've looked at the stats here, and the one thing that I could say for Georgia Tech that could play into this game is they are the 9th-ranked offense at home. Much better than they are on the road. They're 24th overall, but they're 9th at home. And so the offensive line seems to do a good job. They average 7.3 yards per play, and things seem to work a lot better when they are at home versus on the road. Now, here's the bad news if you're a Georgia Tech fan, and this is why I think Georgia is going to cover, and that is simply because the Georgia Tech defense is 128th overall. That's right. You heard that correctly. I'm sorry, that's 115th overall, 128th when they're at home. That does not bode well when you've got the 5th-ranked offense coming to town. We think Carson Beck passing the ball, Brock Bowers, and Ladd McConkey is going to be too much. There's going to be too much Georgia. Look at the run game. The Bulldogs are going to roll in this one, 45-17. The next one up is the battle for the Chancellor's Spurs. Yes, the Chancellor's Spurs. You win the other Chancellor's Spurs. You get it, right? All right, let's get to the point here. Texas Tech. And the Longhorns will be at home in Austin. You got the Red Raiders coming to town. The Red Raiders won last year. I don't think Texas needs any outside motivation. They don't need any bulletin board material. I think they know the job that's in front of them. These guys are fighting for they have bigger goals right now, I think, than Texas Tech. That's not a knock on the Red Raiders. It just is what it is. Now, Texas Tech is a very good road defense. As a matter of fact, their road defense, and this was a little bit shocking to me, though, but Texas Tech's road defense is 9th in the country in yards per play. They play some D on the road. That is substantially better than their 53rd ranked defense overall. So that is a huge change, I would say, a huge difference between the way they play at home and the way they play on the road. Now, their road record is not good, and the reason why is because their offense is 107th on the road. So the offense has not been able to get going. They've not been able to find a rhythm, and that's what happens when your starting quarterback goes down. Not against Oregon, but early in the season, they lost Tyler Shue, and that was a pretty devastating blow for the Red Raiders. So I would expect that the Texas defense is going to give the Red Raiders all they can handle and more. And Texas is, again, like I said, they've got bigger goals. They're going for something that's much bigger than just a win over Texas Tech. They're going for a Big 12 championship. They're trying to get into a playoff spot. They know right now that they have to impress the committee. Alabama has Georgia, in which they're going to get a chance to possibly beat. And if that happens, Texas knows they're going to look good. They know that they need to look good. Now, beating Alabama, and we've talked about this before, beating Alabama at Alabama, the way they beat Alabama, that should matter. But I think if you're a Longhorns fan, you don't really want – that was a long time ago, and I think if you're being realistic, you got to go, okay, so it's like a what have you done for me lately? Because I could see the committee saying, oh, well, if Alabama beat Georgia, we're going to put them over Texas. And I've said that before, and some of you Longhorn fans are like, oh, that's a horrible take. Well, it's a realistic take because in reality, you've got a bunch of ADs and whatnot that maybe don't understand football and maybe don't value that as much as possible, that head-to-head win. Now, the head-to-head win is something. It's not everything. Situations change. And so I just don't want to leave any doubt. If I'm the Texas Longhorns, we're going into this game. We're fully locked in. We realize it's senior night. Senior night is, notorious for having distractions, but I think the defense is locked in. They played great last week at Iowa State on the road. I fully expect this Texas defense, which is 20th at home, and that offense to get rolling again. I think C.J. Baxter, that was a really good sign for him last week to play well on the road against Iowa State, a tough Iowa State defense. And I think you get Quinn Ewers. getting him back comfortable, another game in, and hopefully he'll get into midseason form or pre-injury form, and that is a good sign if you're a Longhorns fan. So we have the Longhorns winning, going away 35-20. We've got the Governor's Cup. That's right, Louisville, Kentucky. Kentucky has been on a roll since about 2017 in this game, and I think Louisville would like to end that streak. And much like Texas, Louisville's got bigger goals than Kentucky. So Louisville's going to be chasing that ACC championship game, but you got to be careful. You got to be careful, Louisville. This is one of those games. So I picked against you last week. You know, I thought Miami and Mario Cristobal, I thought he was going to have those boys ready. And statistically speaking, they did outplay Louisville, but you know, the Cardinals just have this. They've got this knack for making plays when they need to, similar to the week before against Virginia, and they turned it on when they needed to. So that's I think at home though, I mean the 11th ranked scoring defense. This is what jumps out at me is Louisville at home is the 11th ranked scoring defense. That is a really good number to have. Also, battle-tested wise, you played Notre Dame. Notre Dame is we have them as the best as far as most complete team at 5th for defense and 10th for offense. And so that win there, when you guys really dominated those guys at your place, gives me all the confidence that you're going to beat Kentucky as long as they come locked in. Now, Kentucky, you know, probably not a lot of pressure on those guys. They're going to come in. They're going to come loose. They're going to give you the best shot. It's a rivalry game. I've got Louisville winning 30-24, and that 24 was a little bit of a stretch. I think I was leaning towards 17, but I'm just gonna go with 30-24 on this one. Cardinal win. We've got the Iron Bowl, physical, tough football. Nick Saban, Hugh Freeze. A lot of storylines here. Alabama is, you know, they're heading to the SEC championship in Atlanta next week to go take on Georgia. That game is already set. Auburn just got beat by New Mexico State. New Mexico who? Yes, you heard that right. New Mexico State. And that was that 31-10? That was like a shocker. It was like a wow. I'm sure that, you know, Nick Saban's aware of that happening. I'm sure he's not happy that happened. He would have probably rather had Auburn coming in on a high note, but it is what it is. And so, you know, can Hugh Freeze get these guys off the mat in a game that looks lopsided and a game that you wonder how much motivation Auburn's going to have to play? And now they're at home. Obviously, you know, that changes things, especially in the SEC, especially in a rivalry game. I think that defense travels, though. And that Alabama defense travels. There's a 7th scoring defense when on the road. That's probably the key metric there. Neither team, to me, has a very explosive offense. I know, you know, Alabama's their rushing offense is decent. Passing game's okay. You know, they're fairly balanced, but I'm going to go with the Tide in a close one, 28-21. I think Auburn, I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of come out of the gate swinging up early type of game, maybe even at halftime. But I think the Tide will be too much in the end. The defense will travel, and I got the Tide winning 28-21. At the end of the show last night, I said Florida State was still one of my top 4 teams. And I did leave an asterisk by that, saying I needed to see Tate Rodemaker play this weekend. After sleeping on it, I've thought about it, and I think I'm going to have to change my prediction because they're heading to the Swamp this week, and that is a tough place to play to make your first collegiate start. That's right, the Florida State Championship. Florida Gators hosting the Florida State Seminoles. This game has playoff implications all over it, as do some of the other ones, but this one is probably, besides the game, the most interesting game on the schedule. Why is that? Because Jordan Travis, in case you've been living under a rock, had a gruesome injury, season-ending. He's been a huge part of Florida State's success on offense, which has been the strength, you know, one of the strengths of their team. They're pretty balanced. I'm not going to take anything away from that Florida State defense. They certainly know how to play. They held LSU to 24 points. But on the road, this is the one thing that gets me from picking Florida State to win outright and needing to see how this game goes is on the road. Florida State's offense is ranked 7th. That's right, 7th on the road. They play very well on the road, and the defense slightly down, 42nd when they play on the road. Now, Florida, on the other hand, they're 129th on defense when they're on the road. But they're not. They're at the Swamp, and at the Swamp, they're much better. Like, they're 65th, which is an incredible improvement over their road defense. Now, you could say, well, they played, tougher competition on the road. Yeah, I get all that. Totally get all that. But in general, the point being, they are much better defensively at home. Now, you've got a quarterback making his first career start in the Swamp. That gives me a lot of reasons to pause, a lot of reasons to think. Not touching this game as far as betting goes. And what is that line? That line is FSU by 6.5. That's right. And I'm not touching it. So I'm not touching it. I think that Florida has a legitimate shot in this game. I mean, they gave away a game to a really good Mizzou team. I think Florida can do some damage at home. And I think that they pull the upset 21-17. That defense at home being kind of the defense has kind of been a crux for them all year, but I think you're playing a quarterback making his first start. It might just be too much. Now, I could be proven wrong, and if Florida State wins this game, this is going to go a long ways for me personally, thinking they're a playoff-worthy team. You do that, you go into the Swamp and win. I don't even care what conditions it's in. With a backup quarterback, you're a good football team. You're a complete football team if you can really do that with this much on the line. But I've got the Gators winning 21-17 in an upset. So pretty big one that's going to shake up the college football race. Now we head out west to the Apple Cup. Washington hosts Washington State. And the Huskies have seemed to play down to their competition, I'll say. That just is kind of the way I feel. We don't know how really good the Huskies can be because, they've played Oregon, so we know they're at least that good. And every test that they've had, they've passed. But these Huskies, they could be great. Who knows? Who knows if they're, are they Georgia good? We don't know, A lot of people say I don't think so, but we don't actually know that because they haven't played them. And they've met and passed every test that they have been given, everybody on their schedule. Now, they've played down to their competition, which kind of gives you pause on this game. You've got Washington State coming to town, feeling scorned about Washington leaving the conference. There's a lot of little storylines here. They play the underdog role well. Wazoo plays the underdog extremely well. They are a scrappy team. They're a physical team. They would love nothing more than to come into Husky Stadium. And they would love, with the Huskies, having a playoff spot on the line to hurt those chances in any way they possibly could. I got to tell you, you got to be careful on this one right here. If Washington plays down to their competition, which they've done several times this season, since the Oregon game, Washington really hasn't dominated anyone. They haven't dominated anyone. They've had a lot of game control, but they haven't really dominated. And so senior night, I've said this before earlier in the show, things can get weird on senior night. There's like a lot of emotion. There's a lot of distraction around senior night. And, Washington's already locked in for the Pac-12 championship game where it's assumed they're going to play Oregon. We'll talk about that one next. But there's just a lot of reasons that Washington could overlook the Cougars, and that would be a huge, huge mistake. I don't think that's going to happen. And the biggest reason is because Wazoo's defense is 110th on the road. And that is going to be a huge problem against an offense as good as Washington's. So I've got the Huskies 42-28 over the Cougars. I think there's going to be maybe a little bit of weirdness and some, the Huskies might play, down to the Cougars level. And that's not really a knock on the Cougars. It's just what the Huskies do. But the Cougars defense has not been that good. And so, but I do think in the end, the Huskies will be too much for them to handle. So I think they go into the Pac-12 championship game undefeated against a team we're going to cover next. And we have the Oregon Ducks. That's right. The Oregon Ducks playing the Oregon State Beavers in the Civil War. That's right. I said it. the Civil War. Still calling it. We're not calling it the Platypus Bowl. We're not calling it anything else. It's the Civil War. It's been that way forever. I'm going to continue to call it that way for as long as this game exists. And so we have Oregon State coming off a heartbreaking loss. Really tough loss. Like we had thought all season long that Oregon State was going to beat Washington at home. With everything that was on the line, and the way that Oregon State had played all the way up until last week, we had no signs, no indication that to think otherwise, really. And Washington came in there and really had a lot of game control in that game. They didn't dominate, but they had a lot of game control. A safety ended up being the difference in that game. Oregon State, snapped one out of the back of the end zone, and that anyway it was a 22-20 Washington road win over the Beavers. I have, there's certain concerns I have. I don't think the Beavers necessarily match up well against Oregon, and it's a rivalry game, so you just never know. Like last year's game, Oregon State, was getting dominated for 3 quarters and then came back and won that football game inexplicably. I think the Ducks have that on their mind. I think they're going to have a lot of things on their mind, and they're going to be angry. I don't think there's going to be a lack of focus on this game. This is one of 2 games that they've got circled over the next 2 weeks on their schedule. But I think Oregon State will have the Ducks' full attention. Here's what's the scary stat, I think, if you're a Beaver fan, is that the Beavers' road defense is 70th. So normally playing great defense, we got the 13th ranked offense in the country and the 28th ranked defense, but you're ranked 70th and your scoring offense is 29th on the road, and then your best road win is Cal in a game that really didn't seem like it should have been that close. And so I feel like this is not a great matchup for Oregon State, and this is going to be, this is another thing. Oregon State's going to have huge motivation. They have no pressure. They can't win a Pac-12 championship. They can't get to the Pac-12 championship game. So you got to look out for that. They're going to play loose probably. But I think DJU, though he's a special quarterback, and you got to be careful especially with his feet and how the Ducks have been susceptible to the quarterback run this year. When it comes to passing the football, I feel like on a lot of tight windows and whatnot, he tends to miss. And I think that's going to not be a good thing against Oregon. And less of an indictment to him, I think this is going to be more to Oregon's motivation. And like some of these other teams we've mentioned, I think Oregon's got bigger goals, but I think they're going to be completely locked in this game. And I think they're going to win convincingly. 45-24 is what I'm going to go with. So I've got the Ducks in the Civil War, 45-24, setting up an epic rematch in the Pac-12 championship next week with Washington. And that brings us to the game. That is right. There's only one. Michigan, Ohio State, and it seems like this game gets bigger and bigger every year, and I don't know how that's possible, but this one is filled with bad blood. I mean, this is, we could call this game could be Taylor Swift, right? Bad blood. Anyway, I think that such a bad joke, but kind of true. Anyway, I digress here, guys. But there's so many storylines here, and it's like, where do you start, right? We'll get into the football teams in a second, but obviously we've got, Signgate and everything that's going along with that. And if you look at Michigan's schedule, and people in Ann Arbor, they probably already don't like me, but I'm going to let you know, like, there is a noticeable difference in the performance since, your head coach has been on the sideline, or not on the sideline, but not able to be on the sideline from the suspension, but also since this whole allegation dropped. And the allegation is just, it's conveniently located in a place where Michigan started to win a lot of football games. And I can't think that this is a coincidence. I'm looking at the last couple of weeks. Michigan has not looked that good, not nearly as good as they looked at the beginning of the season. You could say, well, that's competition, right, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if I'm buying that. On the other hand, I think the Buckeyes have looked really good, and I think they are battle-tested. I think that game against Notre Dame, you could say they shouldn't have won the game, whatever. You could say whatever you want, but the fact is they did go in and win that football game. Now, Notre Dame, as I've said before on the show, is the most balanced team as far as yards per play goes in the country, 10th on offense and 5th on defense. Now, Ohio State has played Notre Dame. They've also played Penn State, Michigan's played Penn State, but the best offense that Michigan has faced is UNLV. The next best offense is Maryland, who was 58th last week, and I think they dropped this week. Ohio State, yeah, they're ranked 19th, and they have Travion Henderson back, and they are a different team when he is running the football. Forget Kyle McCord, like he can throw it. We know that. Like he can throw it around a little bit, like he struggled here and there, but this game is going to be decided. This is going to be always interesting weather, always cold, a little drizzly, sometimes snow. I don't think there's any snow in the forecast for this one, but this is going to be a very physical game. I'm sure Michigan's going to be motivated senior night for those guys, but I don't see any way in which Michigan is going to – I don't see any evidence is what I should say, that Michigan is going to be able to deal with the Buckeyes from what I've seen from the Wolverines this year. I've said they were overrated most of the year. They hadn't played anybody. When they did play anybody, they like Penn State, I wasn't impressed. Maryland, I wasn't impressed. You know, you could surprise me and you could win me over. You guys handle the Buckeyes, handle business. You guys take them to the woodshed. My opinion will change completely because I think Ohio State is one of the top 2 teams in the country. And so, but Ohio State, they have a chance to prove it. And we have the Buckeyes winning a very close one, 24-20. And that'll do it for our Rivalry Week predictions. So hopefully you've enjoyed the show. Smash the subscribe button if you would. Share it. Let your friends know. You know, whether you like our takes or not, let us know. Throw it in the comments. We'd love to hear back from you. Again, I'm Josh Rodriguez for Sports Idol Nation. Sports is in our DNA. We hope it's in yours too. We'll see you on the show, our reaction show, after Saturday's action. Enjoy a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Stay safe, be happy, and God bless.